Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to Forgiven AF Podcast. You guys know this is a Second Chance podcast that we use as marketing material for our nonprofit mentorship program, Second Chance Mentors. And I'm super excited about the episode today, but we'll get into that in just a second. Last Saturday, we did community service with the boys, so we got the boys together. I did a coat drive, thank you to all the people that donated, all the coats. We had a couple hundred coats dropped off at both gym locations, and we took them. I took a few of the boys and we went to Lancaster Ave in Fort Worth and passed them out. And I feel like it hit exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted the boys to realize these people are not that far away from, us, a couple bad decisions and or lose the loss of some family members that, they had for support. And next thing you know, they're trying to figure it out. There are a lot of them that are, self-induced through drugs and, and we can pray for them. But it doesn't mean that we need to stop supporting them. So we took couple hundred jackets. The boys went out there, passed them out, got a bunch of good pictures. And like I said, the boys, a couple of them were like, man, Shawn, we're not that far off from being in that sort of situation. Cause the boys in our program aren't the kids that, I don't know how to say it. They don't have the best resources. A lot of them don't have a dad around. So they understand how a couple bad decisions can put them in that situation. So anyways, it was an awesome event. The boys got it. And, we'll see them again in January after the holidays. Okay, cool. So this episode today, a couple of my buddies, Chris Centineo and Connor Cheek, we all met at church. It's kind of crazy the way we've all kind of been weaved together. They also have a podcast, so we're running this kind of as a collaboration between two podcasts. That's kind of the way this is going to be set up today. And hopefully it goes well and we can even continue doing this. You know what I mean? Like once a season, just kind of. So what I think just a way to kind of like start it off and just kind of let our listeners know kind of who you guys are. Could one of you just kind of start off with 3 to 5 minute kind of like a testimony of how you guys came to know the Lord?
Yeah, Chris will start.
Yeah, I'll start. So my name's Chris Centineo. And for me, grew up in a Christian home. And so my dad became a believer when he was 22 and became a youth pastor. And so I grew up around the faith. I grew up around church, but I really rebelled hard, very hard.
Yeah.
I fell into pornography at an early age. And then, being very promiscuous with women and things like that, which then led to the use of alcohol and drugs, and more so as like a numbing agent to get me over the fact that I was doing things that weren't actually filling me.
So good. Yeah.
And about 25 years old, I hit rock bottom. I was dating this girl. I thought I was going to marry her. I had been cheating on her the whole time. Doesn't really make sense. But
it doesn't make.
And it was funny because she broke up with me because she said she never thought she could be good enough for me or my family. And I was like, oh, if you only knew what I was doing,
Yeah.
And so I started going to see a friend of my dad's after a situation where I basically wanted to take my own life. And so I shared that with my dad. I said, Dad, I need help. And so he introduced me to a counselor friend of his, and I went and met the guy, and I just unloaded everything. I told him stuff I'd never told anyone. And some of the stuff I shared with you, Shawn, earlier in the week. And at the end of the conversation, he said, I need you to do 3 things. Number 1, I need you to go and I need you to tell your dad. And he said, number 2.
Gut punch.
I know. Number 2, I need you to go and tell her, this girl that I've been dating and cheating on. And he said, number 3, I need you to come back and see me. And so really that was the start of my faith becoming my own. And so over the last decade, I'm 35 now, has been this journey with the Father and learning what it means to be a son. And dude, it's, man.
So good, right?
It's so fun. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Connor.
Yeah, so my name's Connor Cheek. Very different backstory than Chris. I was raised Catholic, was what I would consider like close to Christ growing up. But as soon as I left high school, I grew up in like this very small town, like 2,500 people, a little bit less than that. And everybody knew everybody's business. So as soon as I was able to leave, go to college, I joined a frat. People can kind of use their imagination with what kind of leads from that kind of lifestyle. But similar to Chris, turned to sex, turned to alcohol. Consuming like a fifth a night that lasted all the way up until I was even dating my now wife in grad school. And it was probably right around the time, so I moved to Dallas from Louisiana. I moved here for work, and my girlfriend, Amy, at the time, she was like, hey, I want to try out this new church. And it happened to be Living Church at the time. And we went, and the very next week I got hit with the biggest wave of depression that I've ever had, wanted to kill myself, didn't want to share. I mean, Pastor Trustin has talked about this before in the past, but it's like Satan doesn't start later on in your life. He can, but typically he starts young. Typically, if he can affect you in your formidable years, he can really use that to carry over into the rest of your life and basically leaves traps along the way. And I ended up stepping in one, really is what it was. And just kind of navigating that, like suicide, all the thoughts that kind of come with it, the shame, the guilt, the burdens that we carry, and then looking at the last insert, how many years here and how you've really lost yourself. And my biggest thing was walking through identity. It was like, who am I?
Yeah.
I don't know who I am anymore. And I filled this void that was Christ. I filled it with everything that isn't. Filled it with the entire world. And so it was probably about 5 years ago. It was February 3rd, 2019, where I got baptized again. And man, since then, the Lord has just been, it's a brag, but like the Lord has been effectively using me and letting me grow so much closer in relationship. And it just, as Chris said, just like we're sons. I'm walking into like understanding of what it looks like to be a beloved son and what comes with that.
That's good.
You know, it's interesting. What a great question. 3-minute elevator. We know so much about each other. We live so much life together. And yet hearing it this way, I realize how similar our stories are, and really probably how similar all of our stories are as the enemy comes for us.
That's what's so good is really a lot of our stories are the same, but inside the enemy wants us to think that, oh, I'm the only one that deals with that.
Yeah.
No one else deals with that, just me. I know my listeners know my story, but I still want to just share a quick one just in case there's anyone new that hears.
Yeah.
I struggled with, I was about 12 years old. My mom left. Me and my sister went with my dad. She moved to Texas. That's where the Texas roots come from. And from about literally 12 on, I started smoking weed, drinking in the woods. By 13, 14, 15, I'm popping pills. 16, I'm selling cocaine. I fell for that whole like young Jeezy rap stage, where like really thinking that this is what was cool was selling drugs and being like, I was a white kid in the suburbs that got out of school and went to the hood to hang out. You know what I mean? Like that was who I thought I was. Anyways, I just couldn't get away from that life. Lost a full ride scholarship in soccer from drugs, went to college, joined a fraternity, probably the worst thing I could have ever done. Nothing but drugs and drinking and parties and women, and ended up failing out of college and was living in the frat house, continuing just to sell and use drugs. Like that's how much of a loser I was at that point. Called my mom and said, Mom, I need to get out of here. That's when she moved me to Texas, came down here, continued to mess up. And then the best thing that ever happened to me was the DEA kicked my door in, and I was sentenced to 13 and a half years in federal prison. It didn't end up getting all that time, or I was, but then, I tried to use God. So when I first got to prison, I tried to use God like a genie. Like, if you just give me probation, I'll never do this again. Like, and it didn't work at all. Like, and then I got sentenced to 13 and a half years, my first time ever arrested. And I was like, this is insane. But I had this weird peace that I'd never experienced before. So I was like, you know what? He didn't give me any time off, but I'm going to continue this walk and I'm going to like see where it leads me. And the funny thing about God is he didn't give it to me right then, but he did give me 5 years off down, like a couple, you know what I mean? As I continued to prove myself and walk in obedience, then all of a sudden the blessings came. It wasn't an immediate like, oh, use me as a genie and I'll bless you. And then that's pretty much my testimony of how I came to know the Lord. Spent a ton of time just getting to know him in prison and then coming home and have just walked it out since. It's a cliche thing in prison. You're going to get out and leave your Bible at the door. But just because of that, I wanted to make sure that was not an option in my life, Yeah. But
it's kind of funny. It's like almost this preconceived perception of it is what actually you were like, I'm going to go against that. And I feel like that's exactly what we're called to do.
And it's weird.
And you shared with me, because today, the conversation, we're talking about community.
Yeah.
And you shared with me these men that you met in prison.
Yeah.
And the pivotal role that they played in your life. And it's so interesting because it's like, having never been arrested, never been to prison, I have no concept of it. But to think that there's actually community
You would, right?
there.
You wouldn't realize it. I mean, some of the best Christian men and mentors that I've ever had were in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, these men, I mean, they had a lot of time, right? And but they know the Bible. They try to walk it out. I don't know what's going to happen when they get out, right?
And it also seemed like they also look for men like you, young men who come in lost, afraid, and they kind of put their arm around you. And they're like, hey,
there is that sort of a relationship.
That's cool.
It
That's
is
really
cool.
that's really
The
cool.
prisons are one of the places I feel like the Lord has a heart for, right? Especially, I mean, it's pretty adamant in the Bible,
Yeah.
Paul's and the different things that go on. But yeah, so that's going to get us to the topic of our conversation.
Yeah, I jumped ahead, didn't I?
Go way to lead us. No, that was good. That was good. And what we want to talk about is the importance of community. Probably more so. I mean, it's really from a all standpoint. Probably more so from like the male, importance of community. As far as like, and I don't even know why I just made that up just now. But I feel like a lot of men are so. We've been told that we have to keep our emotions in,
Yeah.
or keep to ourselves, or keep our problems to ourselves, and
A good Christian man.
yeah, right.
Like that's the label that they've ended up using, and it's actually demeaned us. Like
100%.
yeah,
Or hurt the chance of growth. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
another trick of the devil.
it's a trap.
Right?
Right.
It's a trap.
So what I would like to start with is why. What are some reasons that Christian community is so important? Either one you want to take on that?
I want to hear yours actually.
Okay, so I could go on and on, but I'd say the first one I feel like is the accountability aspect. It's really important to have men to be known, right? What does More Church say?
Right.
To be known, or to know and to be known.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's so good, right? Because when I'm trying to live life by myself, it also leaves a lot of stuff in the shadows that people don't necessarily know that are going on, And when you have a group that you can turn to and come and talk about what you're struggling with, and 9 out of 10 times, and like just happened, there's going to be other men in the group that are like, hey, me too, me
Yeah.
too, me too. I feel like that happens every time.
Very much
So that would be my first aspect, would be the accountability aspect.
And the whole aspect of like vulnerability, right? That has been effectively removed from, I would say, like the playbook of men. It's like, if you're vulnerable, if you're intimate, it actually means you're weak.
Yeah.
And instead, it's
It's
actually
the opposite.
It's exactly the opposite. It's inviting people in. It's like what you said, right? So if your voice is the only one in your head and you're not allowing anybody else to have a voice,
Yeah.
well, then the enemy is just going to continue to twist that, contort that, and spin it to whatever it is that he desires for you.
That's so good. Yeah. Vulnerability, transparency.
Yep.
Just being able to be open with what you're struggling with, because then it takes, what's going to get brought to light? Like if all sins will be brought to light or something. I just feel like there's a way to, when we're keeping that stuff in and not sharing it, it's just festers, like you said. Yeah.
That's my favorite word, because that's exactly what it
Festers.
does. It just festers. It gets infected. It's just a wound, man.
Yeah. 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 I think for me, one of the things about community that's so important is not doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, like if we truly are the body, and each one of us is a different member of the body, we need each other, and to go in all alone, man, it's so easy to get picked off. I mean,
Well, that's good,
the
too.
enemy's going to come after you, and it's just to have brothers, to have sisters around you who can have your six, identify what it is that's coming after you, kind of ring that bell, let you know, hey, Shawn, you got something coming, man. Like, let's go after this together.
That's good.
Like,
Encouragement.
one of the words we use a lot, especially with our men's ministry, is flank. We want to flank each other. So for example, a buddy of ours yesterday, he texts and he's like, hey, I want to bring a friend of mine to life group. And so I was like, all right, tell me a little bit about him. He's like, well, I do jujitsu with him, but church is just not for him. And I was like, all right, bro, like, let's do this.
You love that, don't you?
Yeah.
You
Cause
like-
I'm
you-
like, let's do it. Like, let's go after this guy. Like, and what our friend had said is, I know if he gives Jesus a chance, I know if he can experience Jesus, his whole life will be changed. And of course, we all know he's right.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, all right, bro, you go head on, I'll come on the left, you go on the right, you come up behind him, and let's get him.
So this is supposed to be the next section, but I don't want to miss this after what you just said. And this, I feel like the Lord just put this on my mind. So you guys have a life group that you guys run that to some could be considered a home church, right? At some level, right? Just to throw that
Yeah.
out there. But how special is it that what if there's a man, right, or a family who's been tainted by church hurt so bad that they won't step into a church. What you're offering by having that in your home as a life group is giving people another chance at building that relationship with the Lord. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
totally.
But it just really seems, because there's some people that don't want to step in church.
Yeah.
I would actually say, so within the last like 2 years, so we've been doing it for like 4 years now. Within the last 2 years, though, we kind of got this influx of individuals, and I would say maybe like 50% of them were dealing with church hurt.
Yeah, I believe
And it wasn't that they left their church. It was just that they didn't know how to navigate this new season that they were walking into and how to kind of come to terms or allow healing to actually take place in it. Because at the church, that's where Jesus is. So how can I be hurt by what Jesus is doing at this church? And it becomes this very, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but
safe.
Yeah.
It's almost like a safe place where they can still feel that.
Yeah. It's just like a battlefield right there, though.
It's a tough place to be, because church hurt can totally, I mean, we've probably, most of us have been there. Like, I've been there, right? And it's like, it almost makes you, excuse me, want to walk away. Like, and that's so the opposite of what.
And it's interesting because I personally don't like the phrase church hurt. You know, I think it's a cop out, you know, and I'm not knocking either one of y'all. I say it too, but what it really is it's just people hurt.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we get hurt by people. And the problem is we don't know how to process. Like, we don't know how to process through our own emotions. And so you got people, whether it's they're coming to life group, whether it's, you know, the boys that you minister to in your nonprofit, it's like they have to learn, what does this mean? What do I do in life when things happen to me by other people, or when I do things and the consequences come to me? How do I learn how to process that? And then it's like, how do I process it the way Jesus would want me to?
Yeah, that's
it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
take
not
pride
easy.
out of it.
Yeah. So, you know, and I think, you know, sometimes we think of the analogy I just gave of, you know, people having your back. Sometimes we think of that as just we're in a fight, but maybe it's more so of like, Shawn, I need you to come and help me understand, like, how do I process this? Yeah. You know, maybe you've been there, maybe you've walked, you know, through something that I'm walking through, and you can give me insight.
So that's one of mine that I have in here: similar life, overcoming similar hardships. Yeah. And that's something that's so important about community, is that you don't realize. I went to this first life group when I first went to Moore Church. I went to this life group. This is so crazy. Chad Rudd. And there was 5 men in this life group, right? And me, I'm an open book. I'm like, yeah, so I smoked meth for 10 years, and dude, it was the craziest thing. Sorry, I just kind of put people on blast, but everyone in that life group admitted, dang, dude, I used to do that too. Yeah. Just randomly. 3 of those men then said, I would have never said that.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you didn't bring that up. You know what I mean? Like, because they were still stuck behind that shame of, I can't be a church guy if I used to do that, you know? So it was powerful. So that just having the similar hardships. One thing that I want to hit real quick, that this is not it is a faith thing. If you look at how smart Jesus is and how God set this up on purpose for us to have community, but loneliness will actually increase the risk of a person's death, like increase your risk of death. That's not just you need to be with people. I found a study, and this is not a biblical study, that said that loneliness will increase the risk of death by 26%. It'll actually increase health issues like heart disease, diabetes, anxiety and depression, suicide, and then dementia. Like, if you're not around people and you're not, you know, having these type of conversations, your brain, you just won't continue.
I think also from a spiritual standpoint, like, God didn't create us to live life alone.
Yeah.
Like, he desires us to walk in communion with him, obviously, but with each other. And I think what our spirit does is it starts to decay and kind of die.
The same
in this
thing.
Season as
the
well.
same
And
thing
think,
as it says
like,
here.
I put much more faith into like the spiritual versus the physical. Now, I'm an occupational therapist, so like I'm trained in the physical body just as you are whenever you're like working out. Like, we'll talk about your degree later or whatever it is. We're still getting to know each other, but like, I can't denote, or we need to give this spiritual element like so much more power than I think we do in common day Christianity and like westernized theology.
Yeah.
Like, I think it plays such a more significant role in our health than we actually think.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes me think of a verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10, it says, I appeal to you, brothers. And so the backdrop of this is Paul. He writes a letter to the church in Corinth. And so Paul says, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there be no division among you, but that you be perfectly united in mind and thought. And so this idea, you're talking about loneliness, this idea of isolation, it's like you can't be united in mind and thought if you're isolated.
Yeah.
And man, what a way to pick us off, kind of going back to having each other around us, I enjoyed sitting with you Friday, a couple days ago, and you just sharing your story with me. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. This is cool. And then, we even talked about how, although the things that perhaps you and I struggled with were different, they have the same effects on our minds, even physically, so.
No, for sure. All right, cool. So I feel like we kind of hit that. Why is it important, right? So the next one, I think this will probably take a little bit long because there's so many different avenues and important things that we're all involved in that I think is important to hit on is what are like different forms of community? Because what if we're telling somebody, hey, you need to get into some community, and they're like, what does that mean? Like I need to go to the grocery store and be out in public, or you know what I mean? Like obviously that's not. So what are some different forms of community?
Like I know it's something you're involved in as trustees. I'll let you talk about that. But something me and Chris actually leads the Texas camp. I don't know, you're doing it this year too?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we just got our emails.
October 2025, Man Alive.
So I'm one of the speakers there. He's kind of in lead of the entire Texas camp, but it's a men's spiritual retreat. And really what it does is it cultivates time with the Lord, but it actually gives us brothers to kind of do battle alongside with. Like I always use this verse. Actually, I can't think of the actual verse, but it's talking about spiritual warfare or spiritual armor. So put on the full armor of God.
Yeah.
Ephesians.
And it's like the helmet. I'm not going to list them all, but like, I think that's so important whenever we're looking at our brothers as well. Like my biggest prayer during these retreats is I'm actually praying that armor over them too. And it's the expectation is that we walk, like we're constantly in warfare, whether we acknowledge it or not. Like that's something that we walk through on a daily basis. Whenever we accept Christ into our hearts, we become enemies to our enemy.
Yeah.
And then we become actually like blips on his radar that he's paying attention to. And the thing is, like, I've seen so many guys give their lives over to Christ and then not get plugged in, like truly plugged in. I'm not saying this is somewhere you go and you just hang out. Like, no, like getting vulnerable, getting intimate with brothers or sisters. Mm-hmm. And I've just seen them be taken out.
You notice it's because once they make that commitment to follow the Lord, you have to set up something because now you're really on the devil's target. Yep. You know what I mean? Now, you want to live for him? Okay, well now I'm going to start really throwing like if when you're living for the devil, he's not attacking you, right? Yep. Or you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you take that step in faith, and now that's when, just like you said, that's when you really need to lean into that community. That's what it's good. So I call that men's retreats.
Yeah.
Yep.
Men's retreats, which are awesome. Great places if you don't have anybody and you're looking for community. So like you said, Man Alive, which I'm going to go to. I'll go with you guys.
Yeah, man.
We'd love to have I'm all about stuff.
I want to
like
go to Trustees. I love that. So we've been talking about men's, but like there's a women's side to Trustees as well, right? And I'd love I think our wives.
You go really back to back. So men go the first weekend, and then the direct following weekend, the women go.
That's brilliant.
And it's so powerful. It's really cool. And I can't really tell. You're not really allowed to talk too much. People say it's a cult because you're not allowed to talk about it, right? But it's just because you don't want to ruin the same. If someone knows what's coming up, it doesn't have the same impact on them.
And I like the aspect of going through it with people you already do life with. Like we have the honor and privilege of like there's multiple guys in our life group that are on staff, but there's multiple others who just come. And the thing is, like once we're there, like we forget. So you were talking about prison and how like there's so much time. And I think that's probably one of the biggest detriments to theology or Christianity in the westernized world is like, man, there's not enough time. Yeah. We don't make time for God. And if we do, it's 15 minutes here, it's 15 minutes there.
It's where can I fit God into my daily schedule? That's good.
In prison, I'm assuming it's the exact opposite.
You have so much time that
And I'm not jealous of prison by any means, but I'm jealous of that one aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I needed that. God knew exactly what I needed. I needed to be put away, set away to figure out how to find him, Yeah. That's good. So life groups is another one, right?
Mm-hmm. What do you do for a life group?
So I have I guess we call it a life group. I call it a men's Bible study on Monday nights.
You started that like 3 years ago?
Yeah. So that one kind of died out.
Okay.
And then
All
we
right.
started another one. We have it at our gym. We go back and forth between my gym on Monday nights and then Buffalo Wild Wings. So we'll like go to Buffalo Wild Wings one night and sit on the patio. But now that it's gotten colder, it hasn't been as good. So
Yeah.
So life groups are super important.
Yeah.
Right. Men's retreats, like you said, service organizations. Find somewhere where people are serving. You know what I mean? Like find a place where people are giving back. You know, community service events, stuff like that. Mentorship. Now, community. It might not be a large group, but I'm huge on find a mentor.
Yeah.
Find someone who's
Or multiple.
100%. Why you can have as many mentors as you want. Find someone who is living the life that you want or has gone the path that you want to go, and just ask them.
I'm of the mindset that mentor, mentorship, discipleship, counseling, coaching. Like a lot of these words are in a lot of ways interchangeable.
Very interchangeable.
I think we should all have and be mentoring.
Oh, that's good.
Because it's important. I've got some guys. One of the things that we cultivate at Man Alive is forming a band of brothers, and so having this brotherhood that you have, and it's like y'all are truly living life together, like on the battlefield, off the battlefield, everywhere, and so we all walk with each other. We meet together. We all kind of know what's going on, and then we all have our own individual relationships, and the men that I disciple, and they know this because I tell them this, but I get so discipled just by discipling them.
That's good.
And it's not just the things that the Lord uses them to say. It's also this aspect of I'm following the Father. And so as I'm discipling this guy over here, the Father's discipling me. Yeah. And it's just this beautiful thing that if you don't do it, you don't get the benefits of it.
That's so good. No.
So
yeah, that's really good. We just had a couple episodes back, me and Paul Ficina did an episode just kind of like what you said about the importance of giving back, like and serving the younger generation, sharing stuff with them, trying to help them up in the same way. And it is fulfilling. It's super fulfilling. Let me think. Let's talk about your life group. Let's talk about y'all's life group.
Yeah.
How did that get set up, and how did that birth, and how did it get to where it's at?
Bro,
where you've got freaking 71 cars in your driveway.
Doug and Rhonda Hobbs.
Okay.
You know them, right? Yeah. So we met them years ago at Moore Church, which at the time was called Living Church, which actually is the Bible that I carry. So. It's still Living Church Bible.
I have that same Bible.
Yeah, dude, I love it. It's thin. So Doug and Rhonda, they kind of brought us into that, and they taught us the significance of life group and living life together as a part of Living Church. And we were about to start, like the next semester, we were going to, my wife and I, Kelsey, were going to be doing
down.
it, and they were going to be stepping back. And we were talking to Connor and Amy about, stepping up with us, kind of this model that they took us through. And then COVID hit, and it was like, boom.
Living Church was like no life groups. All churches were like no life
Everything
groups.
shut down. And we started to watch. Our pastor at the time was saying, hey, gather on Sunday mornings, get together with friends and families, in your living room and watch the live stream together, however you want to do it. And we just watched. We started looking around and realizing, like, man, our friends that follow Jesus, they're dropping like flies. Like, what's going on here? And there was this sense of people's relationship with Jesus was dependent on Sunday morning.
Oh, that's good.
And it was not good.
Yeah.
It was like, this is detrimental. And so that's kind of where it started.
It very much so started from there. And then we basically decided, we took another couple. We all decided to start meeting. Yeah. And we were like, hey, how do we keep this going without the necessarily backing of a church, which was such a godsend looking back at it, because we don't have to be affiliated with anybody. We're just affiliated with God. Yeah. And we've gone through highs and lows. I mean, we had, right when we started, probably around 20 people, like excluding, we didn't have any kids. There was like maybe one,
yeah,
two
none of
kids.
us had children yet. Yeah.
And we went through a season where there was like 8 of us. Yeah. And it was really just the leaders. And I would say that was like one of the most fulfilling times though. Like our growth like leveled up 5 times. Mm-hmm. It was just an exponential explosion of growth that the Lord kind of just let us walk through from a spiritual standpoint. Yeah. And then
And we're to a place now to where, I mean, we have about 50, probably on average 50 people that come to my house every other Saturday night, 5:30 to 8:30.
Yeah.
I think at the biggest we've had about 75.
Yeah.
What is your long-term vision for it?
Oh man, this is where we're at now.
Man, that's a good question.
Where we're at.
Because, and we can just go there. We can go there. I feel like a lot of times when I've been associated with life groups that have gotten to a certain size, when you are affiliated with the church, they're like, cut that thing up, split that thing up. Let's split that thing.
So there's a couple of things that we said from the beginning. Number one, we don't have an interest in replacing a Sunday morning gathering. So we don't. So, and I phrased that specifically. I'll say it how normal people would say it. They're going to say, "Oh, why don't you just start a church?" Well, we are a church.
We are a church.
But we don't want that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we said this from the beginning, we don't want to split up. Why would we want to pour, 4 years, 100 get-togethers with people into this thing just to split with the people that we've gotten to know? We truly believe that is one of the things that is detrimental as churches attempt to push life groups, which I think they should. That whole split mentality is a mistake.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I'm not gonna lie. We've kind of been pushed. Our men's group had gotten pretty large at one point, and we were getting advised that they recommend that we split up into a few different groups. I do understand the concept of if you only have an hour and you're getting together once a week and you have 40 people, are you really getting to dive into? But you guys are also having 3 hours of time, and it's you know what I mean. But
yeah, we've recently come in the past like 5-6 months. We've kind of seen this growth, and we're like, hey, Lord, like, what do you want us to do? And something he's kind of brought us through is, so we'll have discussion from like, we struggle with figuring out the time. Our wives always tell us what time we start. We start at like 6:45 and we go to 8, but really the night ends at 8:30. That's when the babysitters are done. So we'll take the last 45, 30 minutes and we have like 3 fires, especially in this season. It's perfect. It works, but we'll have these like mini breakout sessions. So we'll have this big group kind of coming together for an hour where we actually talk and people are able to share, but it's really setting the stage for this next 30 minutes that they'll be able to spend with 5, 6, 7, 8 people.
So then you do break out into smaller little groups, but within one larger group. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah.
And we tried. So at in March of 2024, we started our second gathering. And so we had another house. We put together a team, and then we were kind of coaching that team along. And we assumed, okay, this is going to kind of break things up a little bit, make our gathering a little bit smaller. And what was funny is everyone that would go to the Friday night gathering, because they would meet on Friday, would come to ours on Saturday
as well.
And so it was hilarious. And we realized, and the Holy Spirit really spoke to me. He was like, don't try to break up something that I didn't tell you to break up, And that's when I realized, like, oh man. And because I thought for a while, I was like, man, why don't we start? What would it look like if we had 10 of these all over the place? And so
pretty much in that mindset for a while.
To answer your question, like, we don't know. We don't know I don't know that we know that many steps ahead. I think what the Holy Spirit's put on my heart now has been, what would it look like to find friends of ours that live in a very different community, so that they can't come to ours. And just give them access to everything we have. Like, hey, this is what's worked for us. Y'all can do it too. Like, there's nothing special about us that you guys don't have. Y'all do it in your own community and feed, the people around you. So that's kind of our thought. What that looks like, we don't know. We've got some friends in Arkansas that are going to be kicking something off. They do Man Alive with us. And so they're going to kick something off in the new year.
Like our life group retreat. And they were like, this is what we want. So every year we'll have a life group retreat and we'll go rent out a place, a giant piece of property, and just have
that's cool.
Like 40
and the weekend there.
Yeah. And they were able to come this last time. And I think it really hit home for them.
That's
like,
cool.
Oh, we actually really need this. So, and recently what we've been kind of steering into, the Lord's kind of, it's funny, we're talking about community. That's literally what we talked about last night, and just trying to figure out like childcare, all the little things about it, but this investment mindset. But we've also been trying to pour into the people that are parts of our members of our family.
Yeah.
Because like that's typically what I'll call it my family, right? And how do we partner with them in what the Lord's calling for them to do? So whether it be start Bible studies, start prayer groups, like we meet every 2 weeks. And I was just talking to him. It's like, hey, that's 26 days of the year. That's it. 365 days, 26 of those we meet. How do we make sure we're still doing life together in between those in between those 2 week marks? And it's like, this is what we do. We have prayer nights, we have group gatherings, we have Bible studies, we have just get-togethers.
Yeah. So one of the things that we as a team have talked about that kind of I think is different than how the church approaches it. And when I say the church, I mean like the big, generally speaking, the big C church. It seems as though the church will start a ministry and then look for someone to appoint to run that ministry inside of their organization, where our thought is we want to, like, if Shawn, you and your wife started coming, you have these things that God's put on your heart to do. And so from a familial standpoint, it's like, how do we support you in doing that? How do all the people that are a part of our life group that have a similar passion to you, how do they come alongside you and like do it with you? You know? And so we have this desire to see the men and women, the brothers and sisters who are part of our life group. Hey, if God's calling you to start a Bible study, like, man, start a Bible study. And like, let's let everybody here know about it. Let's promote it. And like, it's yours. Like, go do what God's calling you to do and let us be a part of it, you know, prison ministry. I mean, whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the model. And I think it's a little bit different than.
What's super cool about that, and it is that's different than you're going to get at a regular church.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a lot of times I feel like a regular church would maybe be kind of nervous about what you have going on. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
They want to put us underneath their umbrella. And it's like, we don't want anybody necessarily underneath our umbrella or our banner per se. Like, dude, you're just doing the Lord's work. We
Yeah.
just want to partner with you in that.
Yeah.
You know, it's very different from like, so we've approached churches back in the day. We had approached multiple churches. Hey, if you want to promote us, like, we're just a group of Christians that want to meet, and we would love to like help lead people closer to Christ. And they were like, well, we need to, like, you'd have to be a insert name of church life group if that's the case. And we're like, we don't really want to do that. We just want to be God-centered, and that's it.
Yeah. That's hard. It's kind of you got to navigate.
Yeah. It gets
to
tricky,
handle
man.
that.
There's so many politics and
So many,
Big C
so many
church.
times. And it's that's just part of it. I think
that's a whole different topic.
That would
but
be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now if you got a person who's been listening to this and is like, oh man, maybe I do need community. Maybe that's something that I do need to get into. What is some advice you have, or what are some things that you would have a person look for as far as when searching for some sort of community?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I think you actually said something that was really powerful too. It's like, I want what you've already walked through, or something. I'm probably paraphrasing what you already said.
Like, I use that a lot for when it comes to mentors, but it's very similar when you're looking for someone to do life with.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like, so my encouragement would be to find somebody who you see actively walking it out, not talking about it.
That's good.
Like, what is this person like? Who are they? What are they representing when they're doing these things? Are they practicing what they preach?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's a huge red flag. Like, I've seen so many people quote so many verses, and then I look at the actions that they take, and I'm like, it's not my place to judge you, but I don't want to follow you.
Yeah, that's always been a kind of funny thing. Like, it's not your place to judge, but honestly, if you're trying to protect your family and figure out who you're going to associate with, it is your place to judge that. You know what I mean?
I'm in charge of the boundary lines that I
maybe
set
not,
for my family.
Maybe not them as a person, but you're going to judge, is that someone I want to have around my family?
Yeah.
Is that a person I want influencing my life? And that's good. I think one of the big ones for me is, and I'm not sure the exact wording for it, be people that have a similar life setup, right? I'm not going to go to a life group with 30 single men. I'm just not going to do that, right? Not trying to say there's anything wrong with it. Maybe I'm there to help them, but at the same time, the way single men live their life is not the way that I'm living my life.
Yep.
And I have to really protect myself, because I can get pulled into the jealousy of, oh man, that sounds fun. That sounds, you know what I mean? So people
Probably
that
not 30 single women either. That would probably
that would
any of
probably
us.
be even worse. But no, but that's the same situation. That's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? You got any more? There's definitely a bunch of good ones.
It's a great question. And it's hard to come up with an answer, because if somebody were to ask me that, I'd tell them, hey, why don't you come check out our life group?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think of why.
Why you would tell them?
Yeah, like, why would I do that? And what if they couldn't? And so, I think I would, if I were looking for community,
That's a good way.
I would be looking for people who weren't afraid to get my crap on them,
Oh, that's good.
And so, and so when people look to our community, like, I don't necessarily say those words to them, although sometimes I do, and sometimes I use different words to make it stick better. But I want them to feel that. Like I want them to walk in our doors and realize like I am a total mess. Like I am covered in it. And these people are just coming up to me and hugging me. Like they don't care. They don't care if it gets on me. And so I think, I don't know how you actually quantify that for somebody.
Yeah.
But man, if you can do that, if you can look for that.
I think you just gave me what I want to share with that is be willing to take shots. Not just because you go to a life group doesn't mean that that's your life group for life. Be willing to take shots. Like go to a couple of them, try them out. You know what I mean? Like I've been to a few and I was like, man, this is awesome. I love these people, but this is not where I want to do my life. Like I don't feel, and sometimes I've done that and been wrong. Like sometimes, you know what I mean? I've judged people wrongly multiple times. So I would say give different places and different community resources an opportunity and see if it's for you,
Yeah, that's good.
Be bold.
Yeah, it's important.
So one of the biggest things that I'm always like, so in our little band of brothers, I'm kind of like I'm very blunt.
Yeah.
I'm very blunt.
I'll correct you if you don't phrase it properly.
Bluntness? Yeah.
That's soft.
I do it very lovingly, but you need people
if you
in your
do
life.
something that pisses him off, he's going to call you out to your face hard.
Yeah, but I'm going to guide you gently.
Yeah, he loves you through it. That's what you do.
It's like one
You're
of the
a
guys.
no BS guy. Like, all right, man, I'm going to cut straight through this. Let me sharpen my knife real quick so I can cut through this.
Thank you.
Which is good.
I appreciate this entire thing. But we had one of our buddies who was like, I really want, like, I don't necessarily feel like you're a very like safe place. Like that's what I want for our relationship. I want you to feel like safe for me. And I'm like, I don't, not one bit.
You were saying that to him?
Yeah. I was like, I don't want you to feel safe. I want you to know that when I'm going to speak to you, I'm truly trying to sharpen your iron. Like this is how iron sharpens iron. You can't put a blade to a sponge. That doesn't work. Like I'm going to tell you exactly what I believe the Lord is trying to tell me in this moment that he wants to convey to you. And that's it. So when you're looking for like community members, when you're looking for like community, like don't be afraid if somebody's direct with you.
That's good.
Because sometimes those people are the most impactful people and probably the person you need the most.
That's so good. And I actually struggle. So where that's a strength for you is a weakness for me.
Yeah.
I'm so much of a people pleaser that I won't want, like even I'll have the best advice for somebody, but it could be harsh and I'll be like, man, I'm just going to let them make it on this one. I think that I'm saving them, but I think I'm saving the interaction, but really what I'm doing is hurting that person by not giving them. Now, if it was just hurtful advice, that's different.
Yes.
But some legitimate solid advice and I'm withholding it because I don't want a weird interaction.
So what's cool is too, going back to what I said earlier about the flank, right? So you're going to come head on. I'm going to come on the left, come on the right, come behind. Like as we recognize the members of the body of each of us we get to do this for each other. So there are often times that Connor and I, and maybe another one of our brothers will have a conversation about somebody and we know something's going on. And we're strategizing. It's like, look, our brother's down. We got to go in and get him. How are we going to do this? And so he'll take the strengths that he has in his directness and in this approach of iron sharpening his iron to be able to bring that. Whereas, I get to step into the anointing that I have and another guy can step into that anointing and the whole thing can come together because oftentimes we need every piece.
That's good. Yeah.
And we need people to help point out those gifts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like without him constantly pushing me pushing him, it's really hard to figure out, where does my strength actually lie? Where does the Lord actually desire to utilize me properly? Because you can be being utilized and you're actually doing more damage than you are good.
Yeah, that's good.
But having people around you, having family members, having a community that's actually helping you grow and recognize your growth, pivotal.
And I like what you said because it's also good to have people with different, you don't want to have 10 of the same person's
10 right hands.
Yeah, right? Like, that's not going to work. You knock them over the head, make them feel bad, then you come in and pat them on the butt and help them out. But sometimes it's necessary. You know what I mean? So that's cool. That's really all I got as far as the community part of it. We went 45 minutes and our heart is that someone hears this and thinks, man, I need to get into some community.
Yeah.
I need to find somebody. And How can, if someone is listening to this and they want to listen to the Father's Framework, how can they find it?
Yeah, we're on Spotify and iTunes. We do have a YouTube page and nothing's on it.
Okay.
So there's no, that's not going to be beneficial to anybody, but we are the Father's Framework. Like I said, on Spotify and iTunes.
Yeah, that's good. So go find it, subscribe, leave them a comment, rate it. All that stuff will really help the push. We
need to make an Instagram. I've seen yours, and I'm like, dang, that looks fantastic. My wife's like, she's been trying. She said, I'll set it up, and she's busy.
Do you guys, when you record your podcast, is there cameras?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, there's no reason not to be on YouTube.
I know. Wow. It's just like, man, we just haven't done it. We need to put somebody in charge of it. Chris.
Chris, see, wasn't there supposed to be teamwork stuff?
Yeah, right.
I'm in charge of things already.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. First, hey, thank you guys for doing this with me. How do they find you guys? Do they want to find you on? I know Chris kind of doesn't. He uses rocks and stuff like paper plates or what are the cups?
I chisel in rocks.
He chisels. He doesn't use.
I throw them. That's like my version of a tweet.
He writes it on a message and smoke signals.
Yeah.
That's what the fire. Hold on. Did I hear you say you have 4 fires going in your backyard?
Typically, yeah. Yeah, I think last night we only had 2.
Is your backyard like your dad's or something?
It's similar. It's not that big. So I've got my backyard and my front yard. So I've got a gate that covers the front of it, so we can send the kids, wherever. So
that's cool.
There's space.
Just a random piece of information that was really exciting is Connor first reached out to me and said, "Hey man, we need to shoot this podcast together. It would be awesome." And I was all in. And then they started a group text, and then Chris says, "Yeah, this is Chris Centineo," and I was like, "What?" I said, So I get on before I even respond, so I get on Facebook and I look it up and I'm like, Chris Centineo sounds so familiar. And there he is, a picture, him and his dad. His dad happens to be my counselor. And it was just a total coincidence.
No such thing.
Yeah, I mean, there is no such thing, but it was just, it was pretty crazy because your dad has been a huge part of, it hasn't even been that long, a few months, but your dad's really special, man. Yeah. Do you guys have anything before we close out?
Nah, man, we appreciate you having us on. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for doing this.
Hopefully we can continue to do this.
We just come up with a topic every few months and just hop in here and do it together. It'd be fun.
Dude.
Cool.
Sounds great.
If you guys are listening, remember that you're loved and you're forgiven and there's nothing you can do about it. Peace.